नायमात्मा बलहीनेन लभ्यो न च प्रमादा तपसो वा आप्यलिङ्गान् एतैरुपायैर्यतते यस्तु विद्वान् तस्यैष आत्मा विशते ब्रह्मधाम नायमात्मा बलहीनेन लभ्यो न च प्रमादा तपसो व्याप्यलिङ्गान् एतैरुपायैर्यतते यस्तु विद्वान् तस्यैष आत्मा विशते ब्रह्मधाम नाय आत्मा balahīnena labhyah. So this mantra gives the impediments to your spiritual path. So the self, the Atman, is not attained by one who is devoid of Shraddha. Balahina, no strength, no conviction, no Shraddha. Care, pramadat. This fellow is careless fellow. One who is careless, or tapasaha, devoid of tapas, which is determination, or I think it must be without, not with, or an effort without ideal. Alingat. Lingat means the goal. A linga means without a goal. Make that change, Gayatri, afterwards. But the wise one who strives through these means yetai upayai yatate. Yatate means strives. Yetai upayai yatate. Who strives through these means those who strive through what he said in the first half of the mantra. Enters the abode of Brahman, the reality. Again, an error there. Grammatical error. Spelling error. But the wise, so the wise one, make sure they don't commit these mistakes. So the qualities he says you must be careful. Balahinena, one who lacks, devoid of strength, devoid of Shraddha. When you say strength, what does it mean? The mental and intellectual strength. It's not the physical strength. Physically also, your body must be fit enough for the long spiritual journey. So therefore, you must do your physical exercise, keep yourself body fit. But primarily when he says Malahinena, one who lacks the strength, grit again is another word. You can put any word you want. Grit or strength or the mental, your emotion must be very strong. Like, we say, do you have a strong bond with the family? Are your emotions strongly bound with the family? Is the mind convinced? So there must be that firm belief in the mind of the goal. There's a firm conviction by the intellect towards the goal. There are three types of actions we remember learning in Vedantic studies. They say first action is predominantly done by the mind without the support of the intellect. But your mind likes to do something. Second type of action is Shivaji. Second type of action
Then use the intellect to put that into action.
You are too comfortable. Remove the jacket. அப்படி ஜாக்கெட் வேண்டாம். என்ன அவ்வளவு குளிர்தான் என்ன இது? நல்லா ஜாக்கெட் போட்டீங்கன்னா தூங்க போறீங்க நீங்க.
Morning கொஞ்சம் குளிர்த்து. Now it's warmed up a bit. Yes.
So what is the first type of action?
First, the mind should
delay. 3 types of actions.
Can we say manasa vacha karma?
The 3 types of actions that can be performed. I'm again talking in the context of strength. The real strength of an action is being explained here, or lack of it, when we see the opposite of it. So first type of action is done predominantly by the mind alone. See, when your mind is fascinated by something but doesn't have the approval of the intellect, so action done by the mind itself. Second action, the intellect understands the benefits of the action, but the mind doesn't like it. The mind doesn't cooperate. For example, I don't like to get up in the morning and study, but my guru has been hammering on me to get up in the morning. So intellect says get up, mind says what nonsense. This is the time. Winters are the best time to sleep. Put the little extra cover and then in bliss you are. So the mind is not liking, intellect says do it. Second action. The third action is where there is a convergence of the head and the heart. There is a blend between what the mind feels and intellect understands. So the intellect understands what the mind feels, and the mind feels what the intellect understands. So there is a cooperation between the head and the heart. So when he says balahinena, means one who lacks the strength in him, the mind doesn't feel for the goal, nor the intellect is convinced of the goal. புரியுறதா சார்?
Yes, sir.
அதுக்காக I explained the 3 types of actions. So we perform these 3 types of actions. So the best action is where the head and the heart converge. You feel for it. So you don't have to drag the mind from its preoccupation. Mind itself wants to do it. Mind wants to get up. I like to do it. I love to do it. Intellect understands the importance of it. So on the conviction, the intellectual conviction is there. The mind has fallen in love with the sadhana. Mind has almost developed an infatuation for the Lord. It's like Tyagaraja got infatuation with Lord Rama. And the madri is a bond, inseparable bond, made for each other. A kind of a feeling.
There's nothing other than that aspect only in the mind. There's only one.
There's only that thought. So the mind goes there. The intellect is convinced. Sadhana action is perfect action. Right, sir? No, பாதி jacket வந்துட்டு full jacket you can remove. அப்பா. No liberation. Balahinena. So emotionally you must be strong. Intellectually you must be convinced. Pramadat. Carelessness. So he says self cannot be attained through negligence or carelessness. Negligence or carelessness to what? What is the implication here? It's again very generic. You can use it in any interpretation. But how can we get clarity to that? You can't get into a sporadic practice. Yesterday we attended the first day event of the Kalasagaram Carnatic concerts that were going on. It was a very elevating experience. and very touching, the profundity of the Carnatic music and the depth of bhakti, and how the classical music, this is the pinnacle of music. So suddenly you get inspired. Why not I also pursue Carnatic music? Suddenly your backbone becomes straight. Your head become, you get inspired by it. I also want to do all these kind of funny thoughts. Anybody entertains funny thoughts like this, arrest it. Huh? This kind of sporadic excitement, you get carried away with activities and you go overboard. So when he says practice the sadhana with care, means you must keep your requirements in mind. I am not a predominantly emotional person, so I can't get into it, though it can be enticing because it is food for the mind and you feel good about it. That doesn't mean that you slip into it and you get carried away by it. So when he says you must take great care and caution in the spiritual path, you must be mindful of what your spiritual requirement is. And a spiritual requirement is measured by knowing your physical, mental, intellectual personalities. What is your quotient of physical, mental, intellectual? Synergy, you're getting what I'm saying? So to the extent you're physical, you must do selfless karma. To the extent you're emotional, you must take to bhakti, emotion. To the extent you're intellectual, you must engage the intellect. Hanji.
So you mentioned the three different states of weak intellect and just at whim and fancy doing what the mind says versus the ultimate of a balance between intellect and the mind, and in between would be where the intellect says it's the right thing to do, but it's not in agreement with the mind. So is this a progressive condition which we are able to condition our mind through the reading of this knowledge? We all start with whatever whim and fancy the mind says, the intellect is completely overruled. Is that the start point? And is this a progression?
Very good observation. I think it would be quite acceptable to say that. I hope you all are getting what Sinhaji is saying. What Sinhaji is saying is in the three types of action we said, one is action done predominantly by the mind. Second, the intellect overrules the mind and performs. The third, there is a confluence of the head and the heart. So these three types of actions can it be looked at as a progressive phase where as you evolve, you will mature to where your actions are driven by the head and the heart. Right, sir? Yes, it is indeed. In the initial stages, the mind is very powerful, and the mind has its way of doing what it wants. There's always a conflict between the head and the heart. There's a tug of war going on, and many a time, in fact, most of the time, the mind wins because it's very powerful. So as you do the sadhana and you start gaining the strength, intellectual strength and the wisdom, you're able to tame the mind. The mind also mellows down. So the mind starts to listen to what the intellect says. But at times, the intellect strength has to battle the mind, pull the mind, throw a leash around the mind and say, stay here, don't go anywhere else. And ultimately, the mind loses the charm for everything else and develops an affinity for the self. I've heard this from Setuji many a time. Even other day when we met, Setuji was saying this. Didn't you say this, Setuji? I've lost interest for many a thing that I used to do. And I'm so very clear that I'm so contented with this journey alone. So he is genuinely talking through experience and where he is able to find himself now. Yes, Setuji.
Withdrawing from earlier multifarious activities I was involved. And anyway, I'm still battling, but I'm in the trying to succeed on occasions, but I have to improve my sadhana.
I can relate to when Setuji says that, he's into so many things. And one of my advices I had given to Setuji was practice tapas. You remember, Setuji?
Yeah.
I said, practice tapas. I used to tell him, practice tapas, sir.
Where retreat was all about Malaysian.
Malaysian retreat, yes. Yajna, Dana, Tapa. The three pillars of wisdom. Yajna, Dana, Tapa. So tapas, as in the context I was telling, is to withdraw from many an activity, with dissipation of energy. When you get involved in so many activities, energy gets dissipated. So working towards a goal also necessitates what not to do. Not about doing the right things, it's also not doing the wrong things. So many a time the actions become dissipative.
We call everything as obligatory, but we get into things which are not at all obligatory. We ourselves define obligations.
So can we ask a question here? How do you differentiate between obligatory vis-a-vis dissipation of energy? Because in the name of obligatory, we may get into an act which could be dissipative. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you differentiate between a dissipative action vis-a-vis obligatory duty? That's the question. Pause for a minute or two. Any thoughts? How do you differentiate? Obviously, it boils down to the clarity of the intellect. Because if the intellect lacks the clarity, then you will not see the role clearly. In fact, again, it's nothing to do other than the mind and intellect. It revolves around these two. SR.
Yes, Guruji, as when we say the comparison, I mean to say, when we say how do you differentiate obligating versus the obligatory commitments versus the dissipation of energy, it's how you visualize or intellectualize the particular task. How we need to really make a reflection there. Is it really we need to make that particular purpose is an obligatory one, or it can be something by getting into that? I remember sometime you also given when there was invitation was been given to you for a wedding or the program. Is it really an obligation to visit or something where you can able to avoid and conserve your energy? Is something that we need to just not get the invitation has come, we rush there. So we need to prepare mentally. I mean to say, applying of intellectual analysis on that particular task should be most important rather than just jumping into that.
Yes, an intellectual awareness or clarity is required, but with what yardstick will the intellect operate? What yardstick should the intellect operate on to be able to bring about the difference? Now, for example, you took a reference of marriage. There was a gentleman whom I known, and Ramji knows him. So, and that gentleman wanted me to come and give a corporate talk sometime in January. And when he called me the other day, he said, "Sir, there's a marriage in the family. My son is getting married. Can you please come?" Right after that, I called Ramji and asked, "Sir, am I obligated to go and attend this wedding?" Immediately, did I not ask Ramji? And Ramji said, I in fact asked him, if you are going, if I'm obliged to, I'll come. But he said, it's all right. I think we can afford to, So there is a certain amount of awareness of the intellect. But the question is, the intellect will only operate with the data given. So what is the data that intellect should keep in mind to differentiate between obligatory vis-a-vis dissipative? Intellect is the equipment, but I'm asking, what is the data? On what basis the intellect will decide? And if that basis is not right, your analysis can go wrong.
But Guruji, I think the moment that situation arises, there is again a conflict between both mind and intellect. Mind wants to go there because mind wants to satisfy the social obligations. It could be an invitation, let us say that part. The intellect says that it's a waste of time and energy going all the way. Okay, avoiding can always make sense, wherein which you can resources of that energy saved can be used for a better purpose. It is a debate happens both. So ultimately, which side the scale tilts is the one where we need to take a decision on that. Because there is no ground rule prescribes it, because the situations are enormous on a case to case. Or it could be a wedding, or it could be sending off a person to go to the airport and sending off, or you send him off from the home. There, I could see quite a lot of situations where obligations keep coming there.
So therefore, it is not a rigid.
Yes.
It is not a rigid course of action.
Exactly.
I had to take this call, sir. When you all were visiting Malaysia, I was there a week ahead, and each of you, some of you had come in batches. Yes. And I took a call that, okay, I would be available to pick X from the airport, and somewhere said, you find a way to get to the point. I had to take a call to that point, whether am I to take a drive and pick you up or not. So it's a conscious decision. It is a dynamic awareness. It is not a static thing and say it's not a blanket decision you take and you say you don't do this or do this.
Purely situation based.
You have a situation, but yet that situation base has to have a backdrop, sir. On what basis you're taking that decision? It can't be emotionally driven. If it's emotional driven, then it is justification.
Right.
So in the name of calling obligatory duty, it could be justification, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm obliged. In fact, what the mind is only deciding for the intellect. So intellect only says yes. It's only nodding the head. But who is telling to nod the head? The mind is telling. and hey, do it. The intellect just nods. So it is not real reasoning. In fact, the intellect is held hostage by the mind.
Yes.
Intellect is hostage. So that is justification. That is so-called duties. As Setuji said, we fall a trap into believing it's duty. But I'm with you. I know you are very much in the line, but my question is, on what basis will it decide? For example, for each of us, it differs. Like Usham is saying, it will depend on each individual's priorities as they see it. Priorities are on what basis? What is the backdrop the intellect will use the tool? It is a dynamic thing. What was your priority 6 months ago is not a priority today. So what you would have jumped at in the 6 months or 3 months back, you would today think twice. I say, I'd rather not get into it, man.
Yes.
Right?
That's true. Perfectly true. And the criticalities also changes.
It's constantly changing. So what is that factor that intellect works against? Intellect is only operating with data. So if I give you wrong data of my company, I tell you to analyze, your conclusion is right, but the data is wrong. It's not applicable to my company because I gave wrong data to you. I must give correct data to you, for you to operate on.
Yes.
My annual report of my company, I gave wrong data. The CA did perfect analysis, but the data is wrong. Would you blame the CA? No. You blame the data being given wrong. So the intellect may be operating right, but on what basis are your intellect operating? That has to be clear. That's where the conscience comes in. I'm not saying the conscience is the ultimate thing, but conscience also comes in here to be correct. Ultimate correction is also decided by the conscience. I know whether I'm justifying it or I'm calling obligatory, or I know it is dissipative. But conscience is like a supreme authority, but I still want to know what is that backdrop the intellect uses.
No idea, Guruji. No, I'm not.
I'm only taking us along in the journey.
Yeah.
When you sail through the question, so many facets unfold. No. Yes, sir. Yes, Gayatri Ma, what is it that you are saying?
Guruji, always this conflict comes, any action, if I have to do it, I say it has to be done and I do it. But I always feel that it doesn't take me to my goal or the self-realization, it's futile. Although I may say it's obligatory, I feel it's a justification I give. Means that one pointed focus that I have to reach the self is the only goal I should have, I feel. So when I say that I'm doing...
Okay, you're going a little too fast for me. I don't know about others. You'll have to come back a little slowly to that.
For me, anything action when I do, if it doesn't take me to the goal or the self-realization, everything else is futile for me. It's when I say it's obligation, I'm doing it, I will do it. But it is definitely, I feel it's not a justified one. Is it true? Like, if it can be avoided, why not avoid it?
You're still a little too fast for me. I'm sorry to say that. I don't know, is everybody able to follow her? Can you come again, Ma? I'm sorry.
Yeah, any action when we do, it should definitely, there are only two options, whether it is taking me to the goal of self-realization or not.
Well, forget self-realization. It could be it's a very lofty goal.
Anything.
As I said, how many of us are able to conceive the goal self-realization? So the text, Upanishad always talks of self. So therefore, we are forced to use the term, but it could be relative also, right? Okay.
Anything we doing, whether it is taking me to my goal. If it is taking, then you do it. If it is not taking, then it is futile, as per me. Is it correct?
Correct. That's the point. Yes. So if an action takes you to your goal, you do it. If it doesn't take you to a goal, it is dissipation of energy, right?
Still, we do the duty telling it as obligatory. So is it not an umbrella we are taking to justify that?
See, when you use the word obligatory, you are bound to do it. You can't escape that. You are bound because of your previous choices. 22 years ago, I decided I would get married. You ask me whether I took the right decision or not, I will not openly say that. But I've taken a decision, I've acted on it. Now I have an obligation. I can't abandon my family in the name of spiritual growth. Can I? I can't say you pack your bags, or I am packing my bags and leaving. You are provided for, you live your life, I am going. I can't do that in the name of spirituality, because spirituality doesn't tell you to abandon your obligatory duties. So when we use the word obligatory, it means you're bound by it. You can't escape them on any note. You can't run away. So as a son, I have an obligation towards my parents. So there's a discussion on the 26th or 28th. There's a wedding in my cousin's home. There's a wedding. My mother says, I need to go there. And I have to go alone. You will send me there and just show your face and go. I know you will not be interested in all the thing, but you come, just show your face and go. So as a son, I have an obligation to take my mother there. I can say I'll book a cab for you. No, as an obligation to take my mother there. Now, your question is it an umbrella justification, or is it really taking me to my goal? I leave you to decide. That's the question. When I ask you a question, Ulta, you're asking me a question. Gayatri Ma, you're supposed to give me answer, not give me questions.
In my case, I cannot decide for others. In my case, depending on my relation with that person, as you say, mother, we have to take it. There's no option for me if same situation is for me.
So it is a very certain actions you can't avoid. There are certain, when you talk of obligatory, they're kamya karma. Certain actions you have to abandon. Anything driven on desire has to be abandoned. Kamya karma has to be abandoned. Means you should not act on desires. Nitya karma has to be performed. Nitya means regular duties. Naimitya karma is special duties. So there are certain duties you have to perform. You're bound to do it. But at some point, you will start questioning them. I don't see a certain purpose in it. Because what obligations you had then, your obligations have changed now. So you must take a stock of it now, a current evaluation. So I would still say, does it take me to a goal is your primary obligation. That should be the backdrop. SR, I was asking, what is the backdrop the intellect works is, does my action take me to my goal? That should be the backdrop.
That means that every time we come into this conflict, the mind versus intellect, who has to make the winner out of that? So the beneficiary factor is that does these actions take me to the ultimate goal?
To your goal.
That is the question has to be brought into the mind, and which answers the better, whether the mind answers or the intellect answers, is the one where we need to take a call.
Yeah. But if the mind is strong, intellect, any amount of argument, it will not listen. It will do what it wants. But on paper, the question you have to constantly ask is, does this take me to my goal? That's when it becomes obligation.
Highly challenging, Guruji, because with this, unfortunately, prior to this class where you were mentioning that the spiritual seeking is becoming more of a pastime and the part-time. the way the lives have been dwindling with the running around and everything. Like we attend 2 days in a week as a refreshment to the minds. But I know, honestly, the amount of practice we put it into the spiritual seeking the rest of the days. So just windswept with the issues and getting away from that magnetic force and anchoring towards it. Consciously, we know that this makes the life difference, but invariably the obligations are drifting. I can say this is what it is being. Those obligations of worldly affairs are so powerful and
Strong.
magnetic effect.
Yeah. That is a test. That's a test of work. And that's what he says. Balahinena, this spiritual path is not meant for those who are weak. It means mind is not clear, intellect is not convinced. So the first point in the mantra, we learned that. So you must be very clear. So there you don't get distracted by so many so-called obligations. I used to tell, you think they'll not get married if I don't go to the function? If you tell me they'll not marry if I'm not there, then I'll come. Huh? What are you talking? What are you going and doing there? I tell you, it's a colossal waste of time and money. And there are people who are willing to waste their time and money, and you are ready to waste your resources to just fan their egos so that they come and fan your ego. You please them, they please you. It's just kind of entertainment going on. It's a complete waste of everything. The waste. I would say the marriage also is a waste. You know, there's a time, there was a study done. I don't know whether it is there. You know, these celebrities, the kind of effort they put into doing exotic destinations and, you know, bringing in celebrities and whatnot. And then they were analyzing how long have they lived together after marriage. And they were analyzing what is the cost it had for them in their per day, how much did they spend? Let's say that fellow spends $10 million or $1 million he spends on a wedding, and his marriage lasted only 1 month or 2 months. So it costed him that much for those 2 months. There was some kind of study that was done. Some people were ridiculous. Said, for what? What are you trying to do? For what? So again, it is subjective, you know. So as you grow spiritually, your perspective changes to many a thing. What would have been necessary for you becomes dissipative. Come on, yaar. Chalega. Can go on without it. So as you grow, the backdrop with which you are measuring is the goal keeps becoming clearer. The goal becomes loftier, as a result of which the goal comes into, or the goal takes a precedence over other activities. So this becomes your primary goal, primary activity. Everything else takes a secondary. So there are primary duties, there are secondary duties, there are other obligatory duties. When my mother tells me to drop me to the function, I can't say my primary duty is self-realization. I will not perform. No. Hey, you perform, you take care of self-realization. First drop me, she'll say. And she'll give me a pat on my back and say, better drop me. So I must understand at that point, that's my primary obligation. You can put self-realization aside. See, you got to have that sense of proportion to that action. But it is not, again, license given to mind and then you do what you want. Still not justification. It's always the intellect. And then obligatory is where you can't escape them. If you can escape, please. If you can get away from certain actions, please get away. Most likely they are dissipative. Sidhuji.
This keeping one method I have followed, I found is, see, I started attending decreasing social functions Initially, I used to think that is the mandatory. I used to be active in Rotary, my college, school get-togethers and all that. So now some groups have got the message that if he is invited also, he is not going to come and he will not participate in the whole thing. So better not inviting. Or then what happens? The mind says I am being ignored, or we get a feeling. But there we have to battle slowly as we evolve. The things drop out themselves, or we lose interest. And we and one Guruji, about 10, 15, 10 to 15 of my classmates and college mates have expired in this 1 year, last 1 year. And I have found the friends as well as family as just are busy with their own things or have forgotten them. Occasionally they may remind them. So we ourselves feel we are very important and required, and we are required everywhere. It's not so. Just because we appear, they want to be nice. Otherwise, we are not at all indispensable in our. That's the feeling I get. Even the whole thing is transient, and we have to focus on our goal. But mind keeps creating stories. Mind.
True, very true. It's a battle between the mind, and as I said, life can go on without you.
See, when Indira Gandhi died, I thought our country will collapse, but things went on. So it's the case with everyone. No.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other inputs? How to differentiate between dissipative vis-a-vis obligatory? Vanda. Huh? Unrealistic statement, Shivaji. It is never possible for people to think like that. So don't worry. There will be plenty of functions and plenty of people will come. So imagine all will become philosophers. What will happen? It's like saying all will become givers. There'll be no takers. It's a hypothetical statement you're making. So that's never going to happen. Hariji.
Guruji, it depends on the attitude with which we are doing. I am invited for a marriage. For example, I can genuinely go for the marriage and bless the couple. I can also go to the marriage because it is a social function. I can meet my friends. I can have a good lunch, whatever it may be. So if I am going to the marriage with the intention of genuinely blessing the couple, then it becomes an obligation. Whereas if I am going there only...
No. When you're obliged to go with the right attitude. Just because you have the right attitude, but you do a wrong action doesn't justify. No, I may have the right attitude. Sir, I have a right attitude. But I go to a function where I'm not supposed to go, or where some relation, as I said, I got an invitation to attend a wedding. I know I'm not obliged to go. But my intention may be genuine, to genuinely wish. I'm not going to pamper my senses or indulge in any other activity there. But my intention can be pure, but I can be doing a wrong action. I am not, it would tantamount to dissipation when if you don't have to do that. Your intention doesn't necessarily justify whether it's dissipative or not, sir. Please.
No, I will know it, if somebody is coming and inviting me, whether he is genuinely inviting me or not, I can definitely make up.
It is none of my business to see whether that fellow is genuinely inviting me or not. He may be socially bound. Last time you invited, therefore he has to invite you. That's not my business to decide whether it's his job is to invite. The world will throw many invitations at you. Am I to dance to every invitation? Am I to reciprocate to every invitation? Invitation not necessary. So my comment, sorry, I had to interrupt, is because your attitude will not help you decide whether it's dissipative or obligatory. I don't think that's the right thing, sir. Raghu Garu.
Hari Om Guruji.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to just add, I used to attend marriages uninvited in Hyderabad when I was a bachelor with my friend.
Uninvited. That is
all marriages I used to go there, eat.
That's a different category of people we are talking about. Yes, sir. Never mind.
Yeah, I usually eat in. Yeah, we used to eat outside that bachelor curry point and all. Sometimes we get fed up and we go to marriages uninvited, we eat nicely and we even bless the couple. We don't know who they are, but we just eat and bless them and come back to home.
Sir, I hope you have stopped doing that now.
Yeah, I stopped recently.
Thank you, sir.
But earlier
very recently, is it? So any further input, sir? One can take it to a level where it may not be accepted or appreciated by others. You've got to be very careful. It may unsettle others. You've got to be careful. I'm not talking in the context of what Raghu you said. Something came to my mind. I didn't come for my daughter's delivery. 18 years ago, I was in Malaysia. I told her I will not come. I didn't see my daughter for first 3 months. I told her it is dissipation of energy. The backlash I'm still facing, sir. So I'm saying I have to be careful. Everything has a backlash, no? So I go home now, there'll be backlash because she's online on Facebook, she's watching. So there'll be a backlash again. It's like disturbing the wound, you know, it'll suddenly start oozing again. So I took a decision. I want to see, is there an anxiety, how my mind behaves. As I said, when you do a certain action, it can unsettle others. So be it. Sinaji.
One method could be to shun away from all duties, and then the obligatory duty repercussion will show up.
As I'm talking of backlash, is it? No, that's not the right way of doing it. You know, in the process, you may be not doing what you ought to do. I don't believe in the context of the example I gave, but however, that's subjective. How each one of you would comment to that is subjective. But that clarity is required. And as you evolve, what meant so much to you doesn't matter to you. So that perspective is dynamic. So intellect, remember, intellect doesn't operate on values. Intellect operates on proportion. Value is medicine, proportion is dosage. So intellect always, when we say intellect, it operates on proportion and not value. The same medicine given at different times to the same person can become poison. To different people, it becomes poison. The medicine is the same. Let's say if I can have anxiety disorder and a doctor prescribes me sleeping pill. The same sleeping pill in a different dosage can kill me. So that proportion is very delicate proportion you have to have. Reddy Garu, are you following, sir? So in application of this quality of whether it's dissipative or obligatory, it is a very thin line because that dosage is important. And if that dosage is not injected rightly, it can have consequences. To take the extremity, Lord Buddha, Prince Narendra, isn't it? Or not Narendra, it is, who is it? Siddhartha. Prince Siddhartha walked away. Narendra was the great Vivekananda. So Siddhartha walked away as a prince. He walked away from his family, his young child, from a kingdom, and he became Buddha. Now, can you and I take that? It might just be out of proportion, and then it can have irreparable consequences. It can forget the consequences. The biggest consequences, you would not be true to that decision because you're not ready for it. But the decision I had taken not to be there, not a single moment I repented. I was very comfortable with myself. I must be true to myself, not for others' sake. Now, I'm not saying I did the right thing or wrong thing. So it is always important that you must have that proportion. And that's the intellect always operates on proportion, not on values. So don't go wrong in the proportion. All right, so if there are any further thoughts, we can always revisit, and I'll come back to the fourth mantra. I will continue. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.